InnovaBuzz podcast, helping smart businesses be even more innovative.
Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz. Welcome to episode number 55 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, designed to help smart businesses with an interest in innovation become even more innovative. In this episode, my guest is Allegra Sinclair of the Allegrativity Powercast. She's a personal transformation coach and a passionate champion for women. She helps women overcome their fears and achieve their very awesome best by building and increasing their self-confidence. And not only women, she also helps some men. We had a bit of a joke about that on the podcast, so listen and find out more. This was a really fun and valuable interview. We're going to learn a lot more about and be inspired by Allegra's story as a feel-confident coach and as a motivator for unlocking the true potential in everyone. So, without further ado, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Allegra Sinclair. Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm honoured to have here with me today on this episode of the InnovaBuzz podcast, all the way from Raleigh-Durham in North Carolina. In the US of A, it's Allegra Sinclair. Now, Allegra is a personal transformation coach who's a passionate champion for women. She helps women achieve their very awesome best, and we're going to hear a lot about that today. She's also host of the Allegrativity Powercast, which is a podcast, and I really love that title. I love what you've done with that, and it is a great podcast too. It's one that helps you, as you put it, punch fear in the throat, show up and tell your story.
Absolutely.
So that's quite vivid. So welcome, Allegra. It's a privilege to have you on the InnovaBuzz podcast.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Now, as I said, I love what you've done on the podcast. I'm looking forward to hearing more about all the other things you have in terms of the transformation coaching you do. It's hard to pronounce.
Yes.
But before we start talking all about that, let's find out a little bit more about your background and you as a person. So when you were a young child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I love this question because when we're young, isn't the world just full of possibilities? So
That's right,
when I was a child, I wanted to be a ballerina / firefighter. Because it didn't occur to me that those two careers might conflict. So yes, I wanted to be a firefighter, but I wanted to wear the ballerina tutu and shoes.
Now, I can't remember who this was. Recently I spoke to somebody, and it may have been one of your friends that we talked about just before we started recording the episode, who had a combination ballerina and something else that didn't seem related. Yeah. So
I don't know, but yes, I wanted to be a firefighter. Don't all kids want to be a firefighter? And yes, a ballerina, which was not to be mine. I have no rhythm. So that was not in my wheelhouse.
And you didn't go into firefighting either?
I did not.
Yeah. Except perhaps fighting the fires of doubt that people have.
That is true. Different hose, different fire.
Yeah, that's right. So what was your journey then from a young child through your education to becoming a confidence coach or a transformation coach?
Well, I'm thinking back to that Steve Harvey joke, but I mean, not Steve Harvey, Steve Martin joke. But it was a long and windy trail. I actually went to college intending to be an attorney. And then I spent a summer in between my sophomore and junior year working at a law firm, and it was nothing like LA Law on TV. And I didn't enjoy it. And I was like, wait, you can have truth on your side and not win? I was so disillusioned. I didn't know what to do. So I pivoted away from my pre-law studies, and then I studied political science and marketing. So after I graduated, I actually went to work in marketing communications for a number of larger corporations. And then I'll say I kind of sleptwalked through probably the next 15 years because I did really well. And I kept moving up and going to like bigger and better companies and bigger and more exciting roles. And I was not miserable, but I did have one of those moments probably 15 years to the date. And I thought, I don't know who this is wearing my clothes. I don't know who this is driving this car. I just suddenly realized I had built an entire career based on what other people expected or what other people wanted or who other people thought I was supposed to be. And that was crushing and painful. And as I crawled through that whole process of shutting out the noise and figuring out who I was, I thought, well, I'm going through this for a reason. I bet I'm not the only person who had that conversation with themselves. There has to be a way for me to help other people either spend less time doing the thing that is probably not for them, or helping them make a conscious decision to do it versus feeling like I'm a victim and I just had to stay there because I had prepared for that career my whole life. So I did marketing communications and public relations for some of the most fabulous companies in the world, from Intel, Mayo Clinic, General Mills. So I had a resume that many would have envied, but I just had that come to Jesus moment when I realized I want to give it all back.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I can relate to that in a lot of ways. 25 years in the corporate world and moving up to different jobs and new challenges, and probably enjoying 23 years of that. But then all of a sudden, hang on, I don't enjoy this anymore. And yes, there were some external changes that perhaps influenced that, but the realization that this is actually not who I am, and I'm actually living somebody else's expectation rather than your own dreams or desires it is it's very confronting at the time, isn't it?
Yes.
But sounds like you've come through it with flying colours.
I would say, flying colors. I think I'm still in it some days, right? Because I think that there are different stages of it and different waves of it. So I think each year and each new level in my business, I deal with shedding an additional layer, but that's okay because I think my journey it's all about becoming completely unabashedly who I am, and that will take more than 5 minutes to accomplish. I wish I could snap my fingers and have it be over, but it will take a while, and I'm committed to the journey, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's right, and we're always learning. I always say that the day you stop learning is the day your life really is over. So that learning, and sometimes I think, oh God, I should have realised that years ago. I feel as though I'm a slow learner sometimes, but that's my inner self-talk or inner negative self-talk, which we'll get to in a moment.
Yes.
And then I say, well, okay, at least I've learnt it now, and great, that's my lesson for today. And some days I have lots of lessons.
Isn't life wonderful that way?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I like the message you give on. I think it might have been an interview that you did on somebody else's podcast where you said, be more powerful and influence more people. And I think that encapsulates a lot of what you're about.
Yes, I would say I would probably put it in a different order. So I would probably put the serving part first. So I would say influence more people, impact more people, and being more powerful enables you to do more and more of that. So I think sometimes, and I was talking with someone about this earlier today, sometimes we want to be powerful for different reasons, and I don't judge different reasons, but my reason for wanting to get better, be more innovative, better, faster at all the things I do isn't so people will think I'm more fabulous, because I already think I'm fabulous. I'm just kidding. But it's not just about being fabulous for fabulous sake. I really do very quickly get to the, okay, so now that I've reached this new level of awareness, what do I do with it? How do I help someone else with it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I love the servant's heart approach, because that's definitely one of my values. And part of that is being confident in yourself, because, I've got people that don't like me, and that hurts sometimes, but
yes.
If I let that dictate what I do, it takes us back to what we were talking about earlier, living somebody else's life or somebody else's expectation of career progression and so on.
I remember when I was probably 11 or 12 and I hadn't been invited to some silly thing or another that's a really big deal when you're 11 or 12. And
That's right.
My paternal grandmother was from Jamaica. And I remember calling her long distance, super expensive, and telling her that I hadn't been invited to this party. And she told me, "You'll know that you're all grown up when you worry more about whether you like people than whether they like you." Now, my little 11-year-old mind was like, what is she talking about? I didn't get invited to this party. But, fast forward a couple decades, and I was like, oh, that was really good what she told me. Right? She really meant that. But it's also about one of the layers when you decide to do something different, right? So you said in order to impact more people, you have to feel confident in that. And that's one of the... It's not the first hurdle, but it's one of the kind of second obstacles that you have to cross. Because there will be people, I'm sure you experienced this, there are people who thought you were crazy, right? They're like, wait, you've been in corporate for 23 years and you say you were unhappy for 2? What's wrong with you? Dude, you should be loving your life. So part of it is also shedding that weight, right? That comes when what somebody else thinks about you or thinks for you is more important than what you think. Right? Because to them, it might be crazy to leave corporate. But for you, it's undeniable. You just can't do anything but, right? Do who you, be who you really are. So, sloughing that
up. Probably, I mean, I've nearly been in this business 10 years now, but, go back to like the second or third year in the business. And from then on, I could never imagine going back into corporate world or even working for somebody else.
I won't lie. I had a moment probably 6 months ago because there was a whole lot of change going on in life, and I thought, to do my business well, I really have to show up. I can't phone it in. You can do that sometimes in corporate. You don't have to really show up. You can just, kind of half step your way in, sit in the back of the room, not raise any flags. But to be in the type of business that will really change someone's life, it does require a lot of you. So I had about 5-minute moment about 6 months ago, and I thought, maybe I should just go get a job. And in the second 30 seconds of the first minute, I was already laughing, right? So then it was I was thinking of cartoons in my head about how silly that decision would be. But I think it's natural to have that thought. So I'm excited to know that you're now at the place where it never occurs to you. Because yes, it did. After all these years, 8 years, it did occur to me about 6 months ago. But I know where that came from. So I sent it packing.
I had somebody make an offer to me recently, and it was on the back of a 5-minute presentation, which I thought was quite amazing. And I kind of laughed. I just laughed. I wasn't sure whether he was serious or not, but he assured me that he was serious. And I sort of laughed at first, half thinking he's not serious, but then I stopped laughing and said, well, that's not what I want to do.
Well, that's awesome.
So it was, and reflecting back on that, it was interesting because I didn't even have to think about that. It was, no, that doesn't fit with what I want to do. So it's funny, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. One of those moments when you had to do a little self-coaching, but you moved through it very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, I love... I came across this quote recently. I think it's Marianne Williamson. This one comes from, "Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." And she goes on to say something like, "It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us." So, and playing small doesn't serve anyone. So there's nothing good about pretending to be smaller than what you might be, and thereby making other people feel less insecure around you, which I thought that's an interesting take on it. It's a really great take on it. I really like that because she goes on to talk about a little bit religious and spiritual stuff, but the key message is, regardless of whether you're religious or not, the key message is that you're here, and you serve your best purpose by playing your A game all the time and helping other people, serving other people.
I love that quote. I am familiar with that as well. But I think I know that when I was growing up, that's not what I was hearing, right? So I think it's an important message and we should hear it more. But when I was in those formative stages, I know going through high school, I didn't want to I wasn't worried about showing up and being the best me I could be. I was wanting to fit in, right? I wanted to get invited to stuff. And I was odd anyway, right? Well, odd for little Princeton, New Jersey, where I grew up. So I played classical piano. I was supposed to grow up and be a concert pianist. I was a complete nerd.
Okay.
I couldn't dance, right? I think I was like the only black child in New Jersey. They didn't have any rhythm. But when I grew up, I didn't think that showing up completely was a good thing. And I think I learned that behavior not because people said to me all day, play small, but you learn those lessons in smaller moments, right? So you see someone who's playing small rewarded, or you show up a little bit bigger than people are expecting, and you kind of get that look that tells you that maybe you're just a little too much. So I think it's a glorious thought, and it's very true that you being small doesn't make me less insecure. All it does is sour my soul, right? If I think that by me not being as fabulous as I can be, that will make other people feel better about themselves, that's really not how it works, right? So my showing up all the way could actually be giving other people hope. Doesn't that give you pause? So think if you're showing up half as much as you could be, you could very well be hurting others who won't show up fully because you're not doing it.
That's right, yeah. That's exactly right. That's how I read that as well. Now, having said all that, of course, none of us are, you talked earlier about having ups and downs in business, even though you're doing what you enjoy and learning all the time. So I love, you talked about reframing negative self-talk on one of your podcast episodes, and I love the way you put all that. You said, there's this confidence assassin within each of us, and you gave her a name, which I thought that's fascinating.
Because confidence assassin takes a while to say, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you've named her Wilhelmina, I think.
I just call her Willie.
Okay. Willie. Okay, so you can just say, "Shut up, Willie."
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. What are you on about?
Well, I think.
So tell me.
I think that. For years, so when I was in the corporate world, I worked in PR, right? And what you do in PR is you try to put the most positive spin on everything, not in a dishonest way, right? But you do try to see the best in every situation. So no, it isn't that our product has more salt. It's that it's crisper, right? Or whatever that may be. So I think I developed the skill early on of deciding to look at things a little bit differently. Right. So I just started paying attention to how people talk all the time. And sometimes I think part of the fun of being a coach is I don't have to know all the answers, and I don't know all the answers. I just love to ask powerful questions. So if you slow down and just ask questions when people behave as though the sky is falling, it's amazing how quickly they will change their conversation. Oh, well, this is horrible. It always happens. Really? Does it always happen? Oh, well, if I try this, it won't work. Well, what makes you think it won't work, right? It's just that little, everybody's always looking for these big seismic shifts. Yeah. But sometimes it's the smaller shifts that are more powerful. So I think what we say all day is really powerful to others, but it's even more powerful what we say to ourselves. So I have several little tricks that I use to make sure that when I'm talking to myself, if I have a negative moment, we all do, hello, we're human, that I don't stay there. It's all right to visit a negative place, just don't get your mail forwarded. That's can right, visit, but then you quickly need to move back to a place that better serves you.
That's right. And I have a business coach that has a similar philosophy in terms of asking a lot of questions, and one of the things she asks a lot is, how's that working for you?
Love that.
So it's, when she gets to the place of, does it always not work, or does it always do that? So challenging a lot of the presuppositions that you might make in your self-talk, but then coming back and saying, well, how's that working for you? And usually you say, well, it's not really, so should really change it.
Well, building a business and being an entrepreneur, that's a specific kind of spirit, right? That's a particular kind of person, right? And we are more creative, and we see things that aren't there, and we're more sensitive. So I think it's even more important when we're doing something that maybe hasn't been done before, or it might have been done before, but not by the people in our circle. So I think it's even more important for us to really get a handle on how we talk to one another and how we talk to ourselves, because sometimes a lot of the work we do is solitary, and we need to be our own best cheerleader in those moments to keep us going. Growing a business is fantastic. It's exciting. It's delicious. It is all of those things. But it is also still work. And it is also still trusting yourself and keeping momentum, keeping focus. So self-talk, positive self-talk is really important for that, both keeping focus and keeping motivation.
Yeah, well, you touched on a lot of interesting points there about, if you're working in your own business, and particularly if you're a solo business owner, you're often alone. So the self-talk, there's nothing else there to distract from the self-talk, if you like. Then the idea of focus, that's a really good one as well. So I've got, actually I was on a call just before we started the interview. I was on a call and my accountability buddy was part of that. It was actually a mastermind group, but my accountability buddy was part of that, and he actually called me out again because one of the things we shared was what are our challenges right now, and he called me out and said, hey, focus. So that's a good thing to
And was
really
it okay
have.
that he called you out like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I was going to say, and how did that work for you?
Well, it did, because one of the things I do suffer from, and I'm going to be totally open here, is, and we've coined a phrase, actually, we were talking about this yesterday with my business coach, the bright new shiny object syndrome. And I think I'll have to look at the notes we had. We gave it an acronym that I don't think's been used before, BN something or other. And whilst I've got a number of projects on the go, and I was talking about progressing those, there are a lot, and some of them are new, and some of them perhaps should be parked, and I should be focusing more on completing the ones that are further down the track, or the ones that are going to give the best return on my time right now. And that's what he called me out on, which is fair enough.
Cool. I think it's interesting because
I call him out on other stuff too, so it's,
good.
it's not a one-way street. We both hold each other accountable.
I think if you have core coaching skills, you can coach in any situation, right? But I do think it's interesting that often I don't say to someone, I can only coach you in this area, right? My clients decide what we work on. So sometimes it's life related, sometimes it's project related, sometimes it's business related, right? Sometimes it's relationship related. It's whatever they want. But it's interesting how growth in one area will impact another. Because we tend to want to see our life as separate. I'm this person in this setting, and I need these skills in this setting. But what I have found is that if you develop skills in one area, it spills into the others. So if you're having trouble being focused in your personal life, right, and you say things are important to you, but then you invest your time in ways that don't enable you to do what you said you wanted to, if you kind of get your arms around that in your personal life, it also helps in your professional life.
Yes, exactly. And you mentioned earlier that we're all human, but we're also all people. So as a business owner, you're making decisions based on facts, perhaps, and you might be not bringing personality to the table all the time. But my view is, hey, you're still the same person. So you need that balance all across the board, and if you're not happy in your personal life, well, you're probably not going to be happy in business either, and not performing at your best, and vice versa. So there's a spillover.
I think that's really astute, and I think also it's interesting when you say that you might make business decisions just based on facts and leave personality out of it, and I think that's an area that, and I'm totally. Well, let me say this also. You can just decide whether it sounded like I was snarking on data, because I'm not. I understand very well making data-driven decisions, right? But I also think sometimes in the entrepreneurial space, we are so content to sit back and wait for more data, or wait for someone else to tell us exactly, well, I did these 3 steps and then this happened, and then we're not in a bright, shiny object way, but then we're running to do exactly what that person did. And that's okay for some aspects, but I'm a big believer in what's your gut say? Right? If we all show up the exact same way, we won't all get the exact same results. So maybe that did work wonderfully for that other person, but maybe your skills, maybe your magic needs to show up differently. So I think that when we take our personality out of it, that's when you find people who are doing more of the copycatting and, not really feeling fulfilled in their business. And one day they wake up and go, I'm not digging this any more than I was digging corporate, because they've kind of removed themselves from it.
They're doing exactly the same thing as what they're doing in corporate.
Exactly.
What other people are expecting.
Exactly. But you really don't have any competition if you stay focused on who you are, on my superpower, because you can't be me and I can't be you.
That's right, yeah. And I was just going to point that out. We come to that question near the end of the interview, actually. But yes, you're absolutely right. And what, and the other danger, of course, is paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
So you're waiting on some more data and you don't actually take any action. So, I subscribe to the, to the lean model in some ways, but also to the 5 success principles that they teach in NLP. So the first one of those is knowing your outcome. So you start off with, where do I want to go, knowing your outcome, and then the second one is take massive action. So you don't sit around waiting for data. Then it's behavioural flexibility. So that's where you kind of see what's working, what's not working, and sensory acuity. So you sort of becoming aware of what's happening, observing and maybe testing, and then the behavioural flexibility, which is the testing and adapting, and then the physiology and psychology of excellence, which is be as good as you can be all the time.
So that's kind of the
approach it's a great little model. That's the approach I take pretty much to everything. So my business coach just published a blog post on our blog, so if anybody hasn't read that, that's well worth having a look at, because it takes that approach to writing content.
Oh, okay.
Which is,
that's a unique approach. Well, I'm just saying, everybody now is talking about content marketing, right? But so many people are trying to do the exact same thing, and then they wonder why theirs doesn't stand out. When in essence, they are just like wash, rinse, repeating what somebody else did.
And I was looking at an interesting discussion yesterday, and it was about Frank Kern. So we'll mention this one. So Frank Kern's program. So I was looking at some of his work too, and I look at these people that are highly successful, and then try to understand the process they're following, and what's the high level stuff they're doing, to understand how that might work for me, and how I can then adapt that and add my personality to it, and use it from a systems point of view. So looking at his stuff, and then I came across an interesting forum discussion where that point was really made. There were some people going on there and saying, well, none of this stuff works for anybody else, because it's kind of the rinse and repeat process. So I'm not sure whether that was actually right, whether they perhaps missed the point of it, but definitely what you said is correct. Trying to copy somebody else is not going to work unless you're exactly like that person.
Which is really difficult. I think sometimes we're tempted to do what someone else has done. I mean, exactly because we think it's faster. But it doesn't take long to pour yourself onto whatever you're writing, right? Yeah. If you stop for just a moment and think about who you're talking to and why you're talking to them, it shouldn't take you 16 hours, right? To take the strategy that someone has talked about, but then make it appropriate for you, right? To me, that takes
so you can,
less time, right? Or the same amount of time as kind of trying to copy what someone else did, because that doesn't feel right. Doesn't work either, right? It's not my story.
That's right. Now, so you don't have, but at the same time, you don't have to start with a blank sheet of paper.
That is true.
Look at various models and say, this is a good model, and this one's a good model too, and maybe I can learn some things from that. But then, like you say, then you put together your own.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about your coaching and your the transformation coaching, how you go about that?
Well, I was like, how much more time do we have? So basically,
it's a big question, I guess.
It is a big question, but I'll try to honor it with a appropriately sized answer. I think that transformation is really an internal definition, right? So people will often say to me, well, what transformation? I'm like, I don't know. What would you like to transform, right? What do you want to change? So sometimes it's a transformation of a thought. Sometimes it's transformation of a habit. Sometimes it's transformation of what product you're offering to the world, right? Or how it is that you're showing up. So it starts with my client telling me what it is that they think is most important to them. Now, sometimes we just start organically and we just jump in with something that the client wants to work with. Other times, I actually work with a tool that helps us actually examine the different levels of energy that you show up with in the world. And then once we figure out where you are right now and how that may be helping or hindering your success, then there are some more specific or kind of more structured action steps we can walk through that specifically deal with energy. So it is always very client driven, and I'm always amazed at how obvious, well, not how obvious it is, but how it's in, I'm trying to think of the right word, it is edifying to see people discover the awesome within themselves. So you said, can't remember exactly how you said it, but earlier you were saying that how we talk to ourselves influences how we behave in business, etc., right? But sometimes I think that it's so easy for us to see the awesome in other people, and I think I'm just honored that I get to do that all day. That's what I do. I find awesome in people, and then I hold up a mirror. So it's awesome, like right? When you get to work with someone and they see something in themselves, or they remind themselves of something that they loved before, right? Or they think back to times when they really did rock before, because sometimes we skip over those successes too quickly. So I'm kind of a miner and a encourager and a cheerleader. And on a path that the client designs, I show up every now and then with a mirror to help them see what they're doing that's working and help them see how awesome they are.
Yeah, I'll talk about my business coach again. So big shout out, Joanne, if you're listening. So she has a regular mastermind, and the first thing you have to do when you come into that room for the mastermind is write up on white paper your personal awesome for that particular month. So it's a monthly meeting. And she talks about, and I know you use this terminology as well, she talks about exercising your awesome muscle. So as you said, it's easy to recognize and acknowledge awesome in others. You see it on the news, you see it online or something, you say, wow, that's great, that's really good. But then thinking about yourself, well, what are the great things about me or that I've done in the last week? That is challenging.
I think it's also interesting. So when you were at the very beginning, when you were introducing me, you're like, oh, and she like steps in the space of really powerful women. And I got a little bit of guff. No, I did get a little bit of guff from men when I first started talking about that. And they're like, oh, so you don't want men to be more powerful? And I was like, come on, sweetheart. That's not what I'm saying. Right? Yeah. But I think that I'm not going through a whole male-female thing, because I have worked with some men who've been awesome, but I just think I just so much have a heart for women. But I think we do an especially good job of lifting others. So even, not just folks we see on TV or, kind of far away people, but we are like amazing to our friends and family, and we really encourage and lift one another up. But there's just like the hormone in us that makes us think, oh, well, if I, salute myself or celebrate myself, kind of like that's not okay. I mean, that's wrong, but but I do think that women tend to struggle with that more than men do. But it's funny, one of the exercises that I really do is I'll help them step outside themselves and say, okay, so tell me what your best friend would say. So don't you tell me what you think about this project you just completed. What would your best friend say about it? And it's really easy, right, for us to think, oh, well, my best friend would say this, and she'd tell me I was awesome, and I did this, and I did that.
Yeah,
And you just kind
yeah.
of let them sit with that for a minute. I'm like, so what would you think to yourself about, right? And it's just a great illustration of how other people will see value in you. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You don't think there's anything wrong with your friend for acknowledging that you did good work. So how about you give yourself a little
That's
bit
right,
of that
yeah.
grace also? Yeah.
So maybe we need another inner voice, the confidence booster or whatever, and
Yes.
give them a name. Yeah.
Yes. Maybe
So-
there's Billy and Willie. I don't know. I'll have to
Yeah,
figure
Billy and Willie and
I'll have to
call
figure
out.
out what we would call the opposite of the confidence assassin.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's interesting you touched on, because you've very clearly positioned yourself to market to women and make, help women become more powerful, I think is your motto, which is, to me, that's your niche market. You've chosen that as the niche market. And when I listen to your podcasts, and I probably listened to 3 or 4 episodes, or maybe even 5 or 6, but there was nothing in there that turned me off. I found them all interesting as a man. I found the points that you were talking about applied equally to men, and so I think that's a bit ridiculous if people have a go at you for that. And
You'd be
I guess
surprised.
we've got to be honest and say, hey, we're living in the 21st century, but unfortunately there are still a lot of people that have 19th or 18th century attitudes where they believe that women don't have an equal place in the world, which is sad.
Well, I think of it this way. So, as I said, I have worked with men, but I just know, like, my superpower is talking to other women because I get us, right? And I have lots of male friends and family members, and I love them. But some days I'm like, dude, I don't get you. I love you fiercely. I don't get you, right? So you're right.
And
when I started
probably,
thinking, who can I help the most, the quickest? I thought, okay, see, I know how other women think, right? So to me, it wasn't even exclusionary. It was simply, hey, who do you know who's like this? But yes, I did have someone say, oh, so you don't want to work with men? And I was like, do you want to get on the phone, honey? What's going on? Tell mama what's the matter.
It's a little bit of niching the business, isn't it? And there's probably women that you don't necessarily get on with and wouldn't be a good match for your business.
That is
and
true.
There might be men that are good matches. So, it's just that's the easy way to express it.
It's just helping other people help me. If I say to someone, or if someone says to me, hey, who would be a good client for you? And I say everybody, they're not going to think of anybody because they can't picture everybody. Right. So if I said something more specific, even if they don't find someone who's exactly what I said, they can kind of see what I was talking about in that person. So,
there's a really good message in that. And all right. So this has been really fascinating, Allegra. I think it might be time we moved on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round, and it's designed to help our audience, and they're primarily innovators and leaders in their field.
Okay.
Hopefully with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions.
Alrighty.
And we'll look forward to getting some really insightful answers and hopefully inspire the audience to help them do something awesome.
Okay.
So no pressure. So
I was about to say, just a little pressure.
So what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Okay, so I'm going to try not to say cliche things that I think you've heard before. So what's the number one thing they need to do? Stop being afraid. I think often we'll have an idea that's a little bit different or that's innovative, and we are just too chicken to try it. And for the most part, what we do every day, if we get it wrong, nobody's going to be bloody at the end of it. So stop being afraid and just do it, right? Now, if I was working with a surgeon, that would be different. Okay, you don't be creative. But for the rest of us, stop being afraid and try something. If you keep thinking about it, there's a reason. So do it.
Yeah. I love, I think you said exercise the courage muscle on one of the podcasts.
Probably.
So
I don't listen to myself.
All right. So what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
So I have really eclectic musical tastes. And I love when I'm feeling a little stuck, to go away like from all of the stimulus I have around me, computers, TV, everything. And I listen to the strangest mix of music, because kind of losing myself in that moment and just allowing myself to stop and breathe and think, I get the most amazing ideas. So I could go from listening to Rachmaninoff to Devo to opera to, I just have this insane mashup of different types of music, and it works for me. It really helps me get outside of what I think everybody else is doing and come up with something completely different. Kind of like that movie Working Girl. Remember when Melanie Griffith took things that were like completely unrelated and smashed them together? Mixing up strange music does that for me.
Okay, I love it, yeah. So do you still play piano?
I do, certainly not competitively, and I don't typically play classical, but after 22 years, it doesn't ever leave you entirely, so it's still in there.
Okay, so you find that is something you do as well, to kind of switch off and
No, because that makes me get too much in my head, so it has to be something that's just like out there.
Somebody else, yeah. All right, excellent. So what's your favourite tool or system for improving your productivity and allowing you to be more innovative then?
My favorite tool for productivity, brain.fm. Do you know that site?
Oh, no, I don't know that one.
So, I don't know, it was a couple years ago, everybody was getting into these like white noise sites, but brain.fm is actually brain waves that are designed to help you either relax or focus, and there's like focus for just reading and then focus for like work. And I can be having one of those squirrel moments when I just feel like I'm not getting anything done, and listening to Brain FM for 30 minutes. Oh my gosh, I'm just way more productive. It's my favorite tool ever. Well, and now they have an app for my phone, so I'm very happy about that.
Okay, yeah, so you can put the headset on as well. All right, well, we'll definitely link to that one. Yeah, I am familiar with it now. I haven't visited that one for a while. I've got some
awesome.
CDs that are along similar lines.
Okay, that would work too.
Play with that one too. So what's the best way to keep a client on track?
The best way. Wow. I don't know that I have the best way. It's one of those things that we're always working on, right?
That's right. That's why the question's there.
Yes. I think, well, I don't know if it's best, but I'm going to tell you what I'm using now. So I'm using a combination of Trello and areas on my website where it's just communication between the client and I. Now, the reason why I like Trello is I'm famous for writing stuff down on sticky notes, and then they're everywhere and I can't find what I wanted. Or having like quick conversations on Skype or whatever, but not taking great notes. So Trello forces me to keep like a running task list and a running commentary on the project that I can revisit. So when I'm having my squirrel moment, or I call it SAD, situational ADD, when I'm having my sad moment, I can refer back to that record and say, hey, okay, so I see that we're working on this right now. What we said last week was critical was this. So tell me, is what you're doing right now moving us towards this? And if not, how can we move towards this, right? So I think it's a great visual representation. It's like silly simple for seeing what you said was important and how you're spending your time. Are you spending your time on the things that you said were important or not? Because sometimes we do what's right in front of us instead of what's important.
That's right, yeah, which is distraction strategy or shiny object syndrome, whatever you like to call it. But yeah, no, that's a really good suggestion. And there's a lot I love about Trello. We kind of use it for bits and pieces. And yeah, it is really good for visual tracking of projects or tasks. So.
And it's also a nice kind of third party that can say, hey, you said you were going to do this and you didn't.
Yeah.
Versus me being like the policeman having to say, you said you were going to do this, but you didn't. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a nice way of keeping communications open, but still keeping the task in front of us.
I've actually got an artificial intelligence app that I've started using now for setting schedules, which is quite amazing. And you can pick either Amy or Andrew as the name, and so they've got a name and they've got their own email, and they'll actually email you back and say things like, these are the communications that I've sent out this week. And they'll say, okay, I've set this appointment for you in your calendar. Click here to accept. So basically, it works with your calendar. But I think that could have the potential to go out to these sort of things where maybe you have a to-do list linked into Trello or something like that, where Amy or Andrew comes back and says, hey, you said you're going to do this by today. How are you going?
I think that's either the most brilliant or the most creepy.
Yeah.
I love so much about that. Hey, talk about that in the future. I'd like to hear how that goes.
Okay. All right, I will.
That's very cool. Mm-hmm.
All right. And the fifth question, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves? I think we've already talked about this a little.
We did talk about it a little bit, but get super clear on who you are.
Yeah.
Not who you think you should be, because that's a wonderful tool I also like to use. So don't answer these questions based on how you think they should be answered. There's no perfect answer. So get super clear on who you are, and then be that person, like relentlessly that person, because that's how you differentiate yourself. Because you and I could look at the same content, but we're both going to put it out there in a different way, because we're very different people.
Yeah, and I really love that. A lot of people have given a similar answer to that, and you said something just then that prompted an idea in my head, and I thought, well, actually, that's because people put out content, and then a lot of people struggle with putting out content. It's, I've heard things like, and this is the inner voice, I've forgotten her name now.
Willie.
Yeah, Willie. Saying, I don't have anything to write about or anything. And people say, well, somebody else has already written about that, but then, they haven't written about it in your voice.
Yes.
So that kind of prompted that idea in my head straight away when you said that.
Awesome. I think it's funny, because when we'll see something on the news, or we're watching a TV show or something with like a friend or family member, don't we always have an opinion? But when it comes to creating content, we're like, oh, well, everyone's already said it. Really? Because you had a lot to say about Family Feud 5 minutes ago. And we've been talking about that show for like a bajillion years. So I think you're right. It is a Willie situation where you just need to silence her a little bit. See, that's why I say punch her in the throat. My mom was so horrified that I said that, because it just wasn't ladylike. But it's just about silencing Willie so that I can come up with something different. So you do have something to say. And if you don't say it, then who will?
That's right, yeah. Nobody else is going to say it in your voice.
Exactly.
All right, so what's the future for you and your business then?
Well, I was giggling to myself when you were talking about a team of people. In this next year, I'm already preparing to really get super clear about what my superpowers are, and building a team of people who are excited about stuff that I'm not excited about. So in the next year, it will be, because I've done a lot of one-on-one work, and a lot of, oddly enough, so some of the friends that I was talking about before, I met in former lives, because I'm kind of a code geek in my other life, so I love like ripping apart websites and playing in HTML and all these other things, and they're fascinating and creative, but someone else could do those. So looking forward, I'll be focusing way more on the things that only I can do, and I'm actually looking into doing a lot of events, or in-person experiences, I should call them, because in my coaching space, there's nothing like someone being in the same space as you and like your molecules getting on them. There really is no substitute for that. And I think right now that the coaching industry is moving more and more towards, hey, you can just do everything on Skype. And I'm not mad at Skype. I like Skype. But I think there's magic in someone actually being in your space. So I know it's not popular. Not a lot of people are doing it. But I'm not afraid. I'm going to be doing more of that, where, hey, we get out and build community in person, as well as using all the technology that's available.
No, that's great. Now, and you touched on something there that I'd like to do live events as well, but I see the opportunity, obviously, for leverage. I mean, without Skype, we couldn't be having this conversation, so
Right.
it's really great for that sort of thing. And with the podcast, I've spoken to people all around the world that without
Isn't it awesome?
something like, yeah, it is. It's fantastic, isn't it?
It's like no boundaries.
Exactly. And so you can use a combination of the things, and it's a little bit like we talk about websites and we say, well, don't get intimidated by the technology and so on, because it's the same as what you would do in person. It's what we talked about earlier. You have an opinion about something and you're quite happy to have that discussion in person. So how do you translate that to an online content strategy? But the online content strategy doesn't substitute for that. It's just another way to do it.
I think that the magic of leveraging tools and technology and systems is that I'll then be able to serve more people, right? Because that's really what it's about. One person can only do but so much, even with Skype. So I think
That's right,
putting the right systems in place will just enable me to do even more than I already can without losing my mind, because I'm big on self-care as well. I don't try to pour from an empty pitcher, but I am looking forward to being able to do even more going forward. Like, wouldn't you just love a whole day to just hang out on a beach and like listen to podcasts? I'm so far behind on people's content, and there's so much good stuff out there. I just have to free up more time to do more of that.
Yeah. So I try to plan my commuting time such that it doesn't take up a lot of my day, because I see it as unproductive. But recently I've kind of changed that completely, because I've decided commuting is probably the best time for me to listen to podcasts, and I've got such a long list and backlog that I want to listen to. So yeah.
It's funny, I have a brother who lives about 12, 13 hours by car from here. And most people think I've lost my mind, because when I go visit him, first of all, I don't do it overnight. I'll go and stay like several weeks. But I always drive, because I love those 13 hours in the car to catch up on content I've been wanting to catch up on, or sometimes I'll have nothing on at all, just alone with my thoughts. But you're right, my commute is easy. I walk up the stairs to my office, so there's not enough, there is no opportunity there for me to listen to podcasts. But I think you're right. Car university is excellent.
That's great. Yeah.
Excellent use of time.
Yeah. All right. So what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in innovation and in their field?
Okay, again, trying to think of something that won't be cliche. What's the number one piece of advice? Okay. If you want to be a leader in your field, get comfortable leading through others. And when I say that, I mean the best leaders don't always have to be out front doing things, getting credit, being seen. The best leaders sometimes lead from the back of the room. So get comfortable with leading in a different way, especially as the world continues to change. It's funny when we were talking about training. So back in the day, the only way you could get trained was you went off-site from your corporation, right? And you went to something where someone was standing up in front of you in a room for like 3 days. That was how we trained. Think about how different training is now, but we still are trying to lead people the same way we were leading them in like 1960. So I think, get comfortable with leading in a different way to be the kind of leader we need for tomorrow.
That's great advice. It speaks a lot to some of the things you mentioned earlier about building team and building community and interacting with people on a personal level. But as you say, it might not be out the front and follow me.
Yes, right. It could look very different.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Allegra. This has been really fascinating. I always love doing these podcasts. It's kind of like a free masterclass for me when I do one. So where can people reach out and say thank you for all that you've shared with us today?
My website, AllegraSinclair.com, or I'm on Twitter, Allegra Sinclair. I am on Instagram, but I'm usually only playing on there, posting pictures of food I have cooked, so that won't be fun for y'all.
Okay.
But I am on Twitter at Allegra M. Sinclair.
All right. So we'll post links to that on the show notes so people can
Thank you so much.
And
this was awesome.
Somebody has an somebody has an appetite and wants to see what kind of cooking you do, you can send them to...
It's new for me, so adjust your expectations accordingly.
All right. Yeah, so finally then, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast and why?
Oh my goodness. This is so tough for me. So, So I have someone's name in my head already, but I'm like, okay, is that the name I think I should say? Or is that the name that I want to say? So I work with someone, so I'll say right up front, all appropriate disclosures, he's a client. And his name is Jack Bourne, and he is like a software genius combined with a marketing genius. And I think he used to work with Frank Kern, but he sees opportunities that other people just think, ugh, this is just such a pain, and he creates solutions for them. And he's funny, and he's really smart, and he's... I keep teasing him he needs to work on a book about kind of the science of persuasion and marketing, but he's a fascinating conversation.
Okay, sounds good. And he's not a woman, so you do coach men, right?
No, he is not. He's not a coaching client, but he's...
Oh, okay, right. I thought you said client.
He is a client, but I spend all of my day coaching. That was good and funny, because he's definitely not a woman. But yeah, I think Jack Bourne, he'd be an interesting guy for you to chat with.
Okay, Jack, so look out for an invite from us for the InnovaBuzz podcast courtesy.
I don't know if he
Allegra
listens
Sinclair.
to my show.
Well, he may not.
I'll have to tell him that I mentioned him.
We'll reach out to him anyway. All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with us and your insights today, Allegra. This has been really good. I've really enjoyed this. It's been quite funny in places, but hopefully a lot of valuable information. Certainly it was for me, and I hope that the audience thinks the same. So I wish you all the best for the future of the Allegrativity Powercast and all the other business you've got going on, and let's keep in touch.
I would love that. Thanks so much. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too. I hope you enjoyed meeting Allegra as much as I enjoyed this interview, and of course also learning about how she helps find the awesome within each of us. All the show notes for this episode will be at innovabiz.com.au/Allegra Sinclair. That is ALLEGRASINCLAIR. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.com.au/Allegra Sinclair for all of the links and everything we spoke about in this episode. Allegra suggested I interview Jack Bourne, a software creator who helps entrepreneurs achieve more and earn more on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So Jack, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from me to the InnovaBuzz podcast courtesy of Allegra Sinclair. Now, personally, I'm really glad you've listened to this point, and I trust that you get great value from these episodes. Pop on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe so you'll never miss a future episode. While you're there, leave us a review, because reviews help us get found, and tell us what we can improve and what you'd like us to cover or questions you want answered on future InnovaBuzz podcasts. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, if you don't innovate, you stagnate. So think big, be adventurous, and keep innovating.